Hi guys, welcome to another quick guidance video. In today's video, we'll talk about all the different finance roles that are there. In case you want to do an MBA in finance, what are the different options or what are the different types of roles that you can get into? So today with us, we have Saurabh Pinjani. He's an alumni of IIT Bombay and IIM Ahmedabad. He did his internship in the investment banking role at Credit Suisse in Singapore, and he was also the career cell head of the finance club of IIM Ahmedabad. So let's just directly go to Saurabh and ask him to detail out the different roles that are there in the finance sector. So over to you, Saurabh.
Thank you, Shavi. So essentially, there are four broad roles that are available when you graduate out of a B school. So which are namely, investment banking, private equity, or venture capital. So apart from this is financial markets, and last is corporate finance. So I think the way I would like to discuss them is that we go in one by one, and then I talk about what exactly the role is about, and what are the pros and cons of the role, and how would your life be if you were an analyst in any of these four roles, and what would your career trajectory look like over, let's say, a 15-20 year period, or what would be the exit options if you choose not to continue after a couple of years. So I think starting with investment banking, I'm sort of well versed with that the most. So what do investment banks actually do? So essentially the role is that you help firms do two things broadly. One is to raise capital, which could be in the form of either equity or debt, right? Or the second role is, which is very coveted, is mergers and acquisitions, right? In this particular division, you could, in this particular role, investment banks help their clients sell or buy particular parts of their businesses or the entire business as a whole, right? So we can sort of go in deeper into each of these bits a bit. So talking about capital raising. So here, what your role as an analyst is typically to prepare marketing documents. So the investors typically get a marketing document describing what the company is, what the key financials are, what the story about the company is, and how does the management look at it, what the industry is like. So there's a document which is prepared, and that is prepared by a team of lawyers, investment bankers, some market research analysts. What the bank does is essentially it presides over this process, and therefore you have to coordinate the effort. And then you also the final output is something called the prospectus, or in India it's also called the DRHP, red herring prospectus. Now, what basis this, then you create other documents, presentations, which help the management to go out there and present to investors about their company. And lastly, banks also have some network of have a network of investors to whom they connect these companies, and they say that this is an investment opportunity which is available, and this is the marketing material. Would you like to invest in this? So they're sort of an intermediary in this process. And the banks also help their clients with the regulatory processes surrounding this whole capital raising process. So that's about capital raising. Next step is mergers and acquisitions. So here, the idea is that you could either be on the sell side of a transaction or a buy side of a transaction. What that means is essentially there is a seller or a buyer, and both the seller and the buyer have a bank advising them. So on the sell side, your fiduciary responsibility is for your client to get the best price for the asset which with the company, which the company is trying to sell. And on the buy side, the objective is that you get the best kind of asset and at the most reasonable price. So here the process is that as a sell side analyst, you would help again prepare the marketing material. You would do a lot of outreach to figure out who would be the potential buyers. Then after that, there are of course a lot of regulatory process through which the bank will again preside with the help of lawyers and legal firms which are involved. Then there's a due diligence process, and there's negotiation which finally helps you decide what the number will be, the valuation which the buy side will pay for the asset which is on the block. So these are broadly the processes. And as an analyst, you typically don't deal so much with the client. As you become an associate and so on, your client interaction increases. But as an analyst, you do more of the analysis, of figuring out, who would be the best who would be the best, buyer, for instance. Why is this asset good? Uh, Doing, some sort of numerical analysis using comparable companies, etc., and helping in the valuation model. So this is essentially what you do as an analyst. Now moving on. So I've told you what banking is. Okay, last one more point. Banks also just provide some general financial advice to their clients. Yeah, what should be your capital structure, stuff like that. So this broadly covers what banks do. Now moving on to how your life would be as an investment banking analyst. So some exceptions notwithstanding, mostly banks have a very difficult work-life balance, which means that easily on a 100-hour week is the typical norm. When you have easy weeks, you go down to 80 or 70 hours a week also. And in bad weeks, you do 110 hours or so also per week. So it's variable. And the hard part about this role is that there's a lot of uncertainty. So you can't commit and say that 2 days later I'm going to be free and therefore I'm going to make these plans, because on a deal that's live, something could go bust and then you have to get back to the office, or there's an immediate transaction which needs to be done and you are in the office for 48 hours straight. So there is no certainty that way. So that's sort of the downside. What are the upsides? The upside is first and foremost is the sort of exposure that you get. So as a 24, 25-year-old analyst, you would be dealing with clients in various industries, and as a bank, you just speak to the CFO and CEO. You don't speak to middle level managers. So the kind of interaction you get. So maybe as an analyst, you don't really speak to them. You're in the room. As an associate and so on, you definitely have a lot of deep interaction with these senior folks on the client side. So the kind of exposure that you're getting. Secondly, the industries. So you could be doing deals in oil and gas. You could be doing deals in technology simultaneously, right? So that kind of exposure, very few other roles typically want to provide. So that's another upside. Third is some of the exit options available to banking or like private equity are not available outside of investment banking. So this investment banking to private equity is the most standard route to get to private equity. So this is one more reason. And lastly, of course, the pay. So investment banking by default is the highest paying job amongst all these options available here. And so typically, in India, your base salaries start from about 40 lakhs, and then your bonuses are about 50 to 100% of these. And this is just as as analyst, first year analyst, and as you go up, the salaries again increase quite a bit. So of course you get paid a lot, but your work hours are pretty difficult. You probably work on weekends as well. So again, it's sort of a difficult balance to strike. I mean, you have to decide what your priorities are. So this was about banking. I think moving on to let's say private equity. So because these two are closely aligned sectors. So as I was mentioning that investment banks serve clients. So of course clients are sometimes these corporations, but also they're also private equity players. So what happens? What does a private equity really do? So essentially, they go out and buy companies, and the stake could be varied. They could buy a small 5% stake, or they could go and buy a 50% stake and control the company. And the essential idea is to make returns. So you buy at a reasonable price, improve the company, grow the company, and then eventually go on to sell the company 3 to 5 years down the line and make a good return sort of out of it. So that's in a sense what a private company does. So private equity company does. So your first job is to source the kind of deals that would be available. Of course, banks help you there. Second step is to analyze these deals, and last step would be that once you've invested in these companies over the 3 to 5 year period when they're in your portfolio, you would help the management with running the business better, or give them advice on how to grow the business. Venture capital is also similar to private equity in the broad sense that they're trying to invest in companies, but it's just that the scale is different. Private equity companies invest in larger companies, larger businesses which are more proven, more conventional in some sense. VCs usually fund startups, so the ticket size of the investment is typically much smaller, and of course it's at an earlier stage of the life cycle of the company. And Yeah, and of course, there's a lot more, and the focus is growth. In private equity, your target company, you could just be turning it around also, whereas here the focus is growth. Uh, and looking at the, how your life as an analyst is. So firstly, typical path to going to private equity is either, sometimes some private equity is hired directly from B school. But that is more of an exception, not the norm. The norm is mostly hiring after 1 or 2 years of experience at an investment bank, and sometimes in consulting firms, but more dominantly, investment banks. And so once you join in a private equity company, specifically as an analyst, your focus is more on analysis of the company, analysis of a deal, and a little bit towards the portfolio. Uh, so banks typically, banks who bring the deals, typically the partners of the private equity firm, do the sourcing business, and your job is just to do the analysis. Now, work hours here are very variable. It's very firm specific. There are uh, some of these global private equity funds, which again have investment banking hours, 80 to 90 hours, added to the fact that there's also additional stress, because in private equity, when you're investing, you're taking a decision of investing that's going to really affect you 3 to 5 years down the line. Because if you buy a bad asset 3 to 5 years down the line, you might not be able to sell at a profit. So therefore, there is also this intellectual element involved, that I have to take the right decision, along with the pace, which is really high. So in some sense, it's harder than even banking, so to speak. But of course, the quality of work gets a lot better, because the mechanical bits are sort of not part of your job. Investment banking involves a lot of mechanical aspects to it, so you have to do those. Moving on to venture capital, there as a junior guy, as an analyst or so, your job is to really source a lot of deals. So you, on a weekly basis, you would be meeting with multiple startups, hearing out what they are about, and then the ones that you exercise a judgment, you think these are fine, then you do some preliminary analysis and you pitch it up to your seniors, and then there's a full-blown analysis if they think there's some merit in the idea. So the difference in PE VC then becomes that you don't do so much sourcing in PE as a junior guy, versus in VC where you do a lot of sourcing. And in VC, of course, like I mentioned, you are also eventually involved with the portfolio company. So there is heavy interaction with the founder, and you would try to guide them on how to grow their company better. Again, compensation here is quite high. I think I would compare it to investment banking, but there is also a component of the compensation which is linked to how the fund really performs. It's called carry typically. So if the fund does really well, makes a high return, you are typically rewarded with some component of it. So that way, it's sort of more riskier as compared to banking, where your compensation is just related to how hard you worked and how well the bank did as a whole. You're compensated basis that. And what about exit options? So again, of course, yeah. Speaking about some pros more generally, again, like investment banking, you're dealing with multiple industries, because the opportunity that you might get to acquire or invest in a particular company could be in any industry. So again, the exposure is pretty high. Again, when you're taking a call, let's say you're a 25-year-old analyst at a or an associate at a private equity company, you will be directly talking with the CEO and asking him questions that to assess why should I invest in his company. So it's a very different equilibrium. Whereas where you were in a bank, he was the client, so he was on sort of he had higher power, or he was in higher in stature. Here you're trying to invest, and therefore that just gives you a little more edge. So essentially you're trying to take a call whether this CEO is a good CEO. Is he? So that's very different in that sense. So the kind of judgment you develop towards investing is fantastic. That being said, again, work hours are difficult. And in terms of exit options, usually private equity is considered to be sort of the target that people get to after working for a period in banking or something. So typically, usually people don't exit investment private equity that often. But typically, when people do exit funds, they go on to start their own funds. And if not that, you do get a good operating skill set also. If as a junior analyst or so, you work at let's say a Blackstone for 3-4 years, the kind of skills and brilliance you have, you can always make it to, let's say you start working for the CEO's office of say Aditya Birla Group. That's a transition that I've heard of. Again, so therefore exits, since the industry itself is small, people usually don't leave private equity easily. So it's sort of hard to pinpoint where do people land up. It's very case specific. But that being said, since these jobs are very coveted, once you leave them, a lot of roles do open up for you. So sort of we conclude private equity there. Moving on is financial markets. So when you work in financial markets, there are essentially three internal roles or divisions within, let's say, a bank, which when you work in the trading or financial markets division, and the divisions are namely sales, structuring, and trading. So starting with sales, so this is not like the typical sales role that you get with something like an HUL. Here the product that you're trying to sell is purely financial. So the job here is to essentially stay in touch with your clients and understand what their needs are. Sometimes these needs are very simple, and you can sell them a simple vanilla product or a very standard product and satisfy their requirements. And that he's a major your client brings a lot of business, and they have some really specific requirements. So in such a situation, you actually coordinate with the structuring team and you tell them what your requirements are, right? So moving on to structuring. Now the structuring folks, they understood the requirements from the sales folks, and they tried to create a product, customized product, which would be suitable for this client, right? And this is essentially what structuring is. And next, moving on. So trading in a bank is essentially about being able to meet the demand that the client has placed through the sales guy, right? So you essentially try to sort of get that product from the market at the cheapest rate, so to speak, in a very simplified manner. That's essentially what your job is. And second thing is that you do some sort of market making, so to speak. So what I mean by that is essentially there is one guy who wants to buy this particular product, there's another guy who wants to sell. You sort of are an intermediary here for this financial product. And at times, let's say there are too many buyers for a particular product, but or let's say there are too many sellers for a particular product, but there aren't too many buyers. But the bank usually doesn't turn these guys away. These clients are big, right? So if you tell them that, no, I can't serve you because there's no balance in the market, you're losing a client. So often banks take on these on their own balance sheet. So suppose there were 100, let's say, stocks being sold, and only 90 were being bought by somebody else. So the 10 stocks, the bank would hold on its own balance sheet, which means that there is some risk to the bank, right? So the trader essentially then tries to minimize this risk by investing in other securities, which would sort of hedge this risk. So that's essentially how trading is in a bank, which is essentially in a market making kind of role. There are also proprietary trading roles, essentially. So what proprietary trading is, that the firm has some capital and they usually trade with that. So you out there, your thought process is slightly different. Now you want to look at the market and look at positions where you think you can create some profit, and therefore you will go out actively seeking and taking positions and trying to make profit. And therefore here the volatility is much high. So because you can get your position right and make a lot of profit, or you get the position wrong and make a lot of loss. So this is sort of also what hedge funds do. So this was essentially what sales trading and structuring roles. What would these look like? And typically, when you join banks for these roles, you're typically rotated across these divisions, at least initially, until sort of your interests, your skills, and the bank's requirements are sort of met, and then you're put into one division. Now, within each division, you should understand that there are 4 to 5 kind of products, right? Like for instance, there is foreign exchange, there's fixed income. There's equity, there's interest rates. Okay, yeah. So these are, and you have to specialize on these. So unlike investment banking and private equity, where there was a lot of generalization, you would work on deals across sectors and industries. Here, there is a lot of specialization. You pick a product and then you specialize in it. And for many years on together, you just know everything there is to know about that particular product. So it's sort of a hyper specialized profession, so to speak. What are the typical exit options? Again, so since this is a very super specialized sort of field, exit options are slightly limited. You could go on to hedge funds from a bank. That's standard exit, so to speak. Or within the bank, you could go to a more sort of managerial role, of course, right? because the talent pool in banks is sort of common, so you could go up into a managerial role. But yeah, so that is sort of one issue, that there is some restriction in terms of what kind of exits you can make. And last possible exit is that, a lot of these FMCG companies, for instance, or let's say oil refineries, for instance, say RIL. So these guys import a lot of commodities. By that nature, they are exposed to some kind of risk in terms of commodity price rises, right? So these guys have to hedge these, and therefore they need some people who have relevant trading background or so. So these guys are often brought in to sort of lead these divisions. So that sort of concludes the financial markets. Moving on to corporate finance. So here, corporate finance, your typical recruiters are something like an HUL, PNG, some Reliance Industries, and so on. So typically, what these guys are really looking to do is that, there are 3-4 sort of functions that there are internally within corporate finance. First is sort of financial planning and analysis. Now here, you essentially do budgeting for the entire company or the division you're responsible for. Look at what investments have been made in, say, assets, and you've tried to figure out whether the investments have been producing sufficient returns, basis which, the company can eventually take a decision later that are such investments to be continued or not. So this is what financial planning and analysis is. Next is M&A. So, a lot of these conglomerates like Aditya Birla Group have a separate M&A team. So of course, they still do hire a bank. Let's say they would hire a JP Morgan or a Goldman Sachs, but the internal M&A team also is there to do a sense check to what the external banks are really saying. So that's there. Next, like I mentioned, these companies often have a sales and marketing. Sorry, not a sales marketing. Financial product sales trading role also within them. It's typically called treasury. So here, of course, you do deal with commodities, like, say an ITC would have exposure, or RIL would have an exposure, but also treasury, because sometimes these guys are sitting on piles of cash, right? And what would you do with it? You can't keep it inside a locker, right? That's the most inappropriate thing to do. So what you would just go out there and you would invest these in safe securities, say government bonds across the world, right? And so these treasury guys, what they do is they try to maximize the kind of money that you would be making by investing in these treasuries, while also, solving for constraints like, you need to manage some liquidity. Let's say that the group would require, say 100 crores in the future. You would invest it in government securities, which will sort of expire or mature in the next month or so, so that you can actually go and invest this 100,000 or 100 crores in this whatever project. Last is capital raise. So again, like the investment banks help you with capital raising, there's also an internal team out there which does investor outreach, and they also help decide, what kind of say capital structure the company should have. And this is the kind of analysis these guys are doing. Now, what the typical trajectory is in these kind of roles. So again, these guys also start out with the rotation program for about 3 to 4 months, 3 to 4 rotations within a year. So it's a 3-month rotation of sorts, and you work across roles, and you may be working across different brands or segments, right? And so your typical trajectory is that you start out as a manager, then you go a senior manager, and so on and so forth. Within about 10 years or so, you become a VP of a small division. You look at the finance of a particular brand or so to speak, and then you become a category manager. Let's say personal care is a category, so you would be the CFO of that category. So that you'd be looking at all the financial angles of that particular category. In within 15 years or so, or this is equivalent to becoming the CFO of a small company, let's say a conglomerate. For example, if you were to join, let's say, Aditya Birla Group's financial leadership program, within 15 years you could become the CFO of a small company. And so to speak, the role is actually a CFO track role. So eventually, if you stick around for long enough, eventually in say 23, 25 years, you could actually become the CFO for like a really big company within these groups. So that's essentially what corporate finance is.
Okay, that was great, Saurabh. I think everyone learned a lot. And thank you for so many details. People would be now, it will help them to decide whether or not or which finance career they would want to take. And I believe that that was really helpful. And
Thank you.
if guys, if you have any questions about it, feel free to comment and I'll make sure that Saurabh does respond to those. And we will have another session with them soon. And I guess that's it. Thank you very much, Saurabh, again. And
Thank you. Pleasure to be.
okay.